There we go. We're live.
Boom. All right, we're good.
Bam.
Hey, so welcome to the show. I want to start by saying this is the first time I've ever used StreamYard. And I'll tell you, StreamYard, we were just talking about this before we even got on. You said you use Zoom with a lot of your stuff. Is that right?
I do, yeah. Uh-huh.
And I was just using Be Live. And Be Live is good, but I had some really big issues with, like, if you and I do one right now and I got a thumbnail for you, I get into the next show and it's using my old thumbnail with you to promote that person. And I'm like, oh man, how do I, and you can't fix it. They can't fix it.
Huh.
So I was having some really big technical problems, and a buddy of mine told me about StreamYard. So I said, man, I'm going to try it tonight. We'll see what happens. And usually there's a lot to learn about one of these platforms, but I tell you what, I came in as a guy who really doesn't have a lot of technical, like everything that I know technically, I've kind of learned in the last probably year here. So I'm really not that advanced. And this was easy, man. So if you guys are doing anything like this, StreamYard is where it's at, man.
Yeah, that's it. You know, and here we can dive right in right now, right? It's amazing what you can do today that I remember, you know, you just couldn't, right? You just couldn't. And today there are no limits to what can be done. Technology has just gotten us to the point where the resources are out there that if it's in your head, you probably can manifest it.
Yeah. You know, just speaking from a business standpoint, I think that, you know, maybe 15, 20, 25 years ago, it might have been tougher to get into business. But your competition might be a little bit more difficult now because all the stuff we've got. But honestly, if you want to go after it, if you want to crush it, you don't need a whole lot of money at all. You literally need to pay your internet bill. You need to find a laptop, and you need to just junk out on YouTube and Google, man, and you can do anything.
You really can. You know, and you talked about competition. I think we're in the time where I think value is the big. There's so much noise out there.
Yeah.
Right. That we probably had more noise, but it's the value that you uniquely bring to the market.
Yes.
That people then choose you. Right. I mean,
yeah.
You know, and then I think we're resonating with each other more because there's so many people out there and there's so much pitch. Right. I mean, you and I, right. This is the first time I think we're actually having a face-to-face conversation.
True. We've talked on the phone.
Yeah, but we've resonated with each other for quite a while. So it's just amazing what you really can do.
Yeah. So, and let me introduce you. My God, I haven't even introduced you because we just got right into it, man. It's a great conversation.
Yeah.
So this is John Puritz, and he is the regional vice president with Primerica. Yep. And you run a podcast, run Man Up Already, and he wrote the book Man Up Already. And why don't we just start with that? Because really the purpose of my show is to give, it's usually realtors, but really anybody who's watching, ways to improve, ways to get better, things that they can steal and add to their life or their business, their family, their finances, their health, whatever it is, and just be better people, right?
Yeah.
So I really wanted to have you on because I know you well enough to know your mindset. I know the way you think. I see the book. I see your habits. And I thought, man, that's really cool. So there's a lot that we could definitely take away and learn from you. So can you get a little bit into the book and tell us kind of the outline of what it's about, what, you know, behind it, where did it come from, and who would read it? What would they get out of it?
Man. Okay. So the book had been brewing for a while. It flew out of me. So from thought to print, the book took 4 months. It was written in really 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it was just, whittling it and adding content. But I've been in our Primerica business since 2004. And, so I'm a Gen Xer, and I was very much raised on you're not average, hard work, grit, right? Like get your ass up and keep moving, that kind of mentality. So I've just always worked like that. And when I was in my young 30s, gave up, I was a high school music teacher for 10 years and gave all that up and came down here to Florida. And my 3 goals were, how do I keep my wife home, keep our children out of daycare, and how do I make six figures? And nobody would hire me. So I through the grace of God, walked into a Primerica office, and I saw the opportunity to learn and then teach financial education, but
Yeah.
then build your own business. And so if that was '04, we built to regional vice president in 3 years from scratch in Port St. Lucie, opened up our first office right at the base of the Roosevelt Bridge, where, in your area. And then that was wiped out and in the recession, and then had to start all over at the age of 40. So I know what it is to man up, I guess. Right. So now, after all these years of mentoring and coaching people, what I've seen is a shift in, millennial men, where it's just this mindset of I'll scale back, or when it gets tough, I'll find the easier. Like it's just a shift. And then the other thing I saw was women really kind of having to bear the brunt of going out and earning the income and being professional. And you're just seeing a big shift in our society. So I was mentoring and coaching somebody who was, in that age range, and I just wanted to shake him, and I wanted to say, will you please just man the F up? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if your podcast or this show is explicit or not, so I won't
Don't give a damn.
but
No.
I wanted to grab him and say, man the fuck up, come on. Because that's how I was raised. And it just had been brewing enough where I had met somebody in 2018, and we started talking about a book. And then I had met somebody else who was able to facilitate that for me. And I really thought I was going to write a book for women called It's Not Your Fault. Right.
Yeah.
It was just this idea of, no, it's us. There's something missing in us that has been lost. And I need to say this, that I, in my early 30s, was given a book called Wild at Heart. And that book changed my life. And so, that book was written in 2001. So here it is, 2018. And I said, 16, 17 years later, this conversation is worse, not better. And that's really where Man Up already came from. It's this idea that God creates us with certain things that, that are innate to us that we're losing. And so I wanted to write a book for men about, you're created for purpose. And what Joe has really birthed out of that was, it's not just men, it's everyone. I've had more women read the book and go, that resonates with me as well. But
I saw that in your reviews.
Yeah. The second half of the book is, you got to stand on 4 pillars. So those pillars are integrity, humility, authenticity, and morality. And I use personal examples and I use biblical examples.
Because say those 4 one more time.
Sure. Integrity.
Yep.
Humility, authenticity, and morality. So integrity is, do what you say you're going to do. Humility is it's not about you. Authenticity is bring your whole self to the party. And morality is do what's right. And, I'm not perfect. And I'll be the first person to say that, these are things that I think that if you hold dear and walk with and constantly ask yourself, how can I get better and better on those 4 things? I think you're going to have a life that you're really proud of. And that for me is really what it's all about. When we fall short, we screw up, we're human beings. And that's the point. I wanted to be a voice in this noisy world of, look, it's really easy or simple. It's not easy, right? It's simple. And you got to drown out the noise, and you got to get very clear on who you are and what you want to do. You are created for purpose, and surround yourself with people that buy into that same philosophy so that you can stay on track.
So I don't know that I have the root answer, but I've got an idea. But I want to ask you, before I give you my idea, where do you think that shift in mindset comes from?
Well, give me a little bit more in particular.
So, yeah, I mean, when you and I grew up, you were the favored kid if you grabbed a rake and you started raking the lawn. And if you didn't, your dad gave you a hard time, or he whacked you up against the back of the head, something. But you were looked upon favorably if you were the hard worker, if you were the one sacrificing to get it done. Now, I feel like let's take jobs, for example. I remember when I was a kid, bragging about being the dishwasher at the restaurant because I was the one who was greasy and smelly and wet and had to stay late, show up early. I had to carry all the heavy dishes. I made the least amount of money. I worked the most hours, and it was a bragging point. And I remember when it was me and my brothers and we'd work on the farm, and you'd load up your shoulders with more and more 50-pound feed bags. Right. And you'd be like breaking. That's probably why I can't hardly walk anymore. And you'd be breaking your back to try to show them how tough you are. And I feel like now, and there's 38 layers to this. It's not just something simple. But I think we look favorably upon convenience and simplicity and getting, you talked about value. And I think as a realtor, as an investor, helping people, you have to bring value to the table. But I think when we're looking for jobs, we're looking for the job now that is 25 hours a week. I want to sit at home in my underwear on my couch. I want to get paid $100,000, and I don't want to be responsible for anything. And it's such an interesting dynamic where that's gone over the last, whatever it is, 20, 30 years. I don't know, when you look at our systems, our goods, the things we buy, the way we eat lunch, everything, we're all geared to go after convenience, right? What's the quickest, easiest thing? We're blowing ridiculous amounts of money on convenience. And I think that, part of it is that idea has bled over into everything. And, to want a fast cup of coffee on the way to work is, in my opinion, a reasonable thing to ask for. Maybe you'd pay an extra buck or two for that. But it slowly gets you to start to want convenience in everything in your life. And a lot of times, if you want true success in anything, it's by doing the hard thing, the shitty thing every single day for many, 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 many days in a row,
Yep. One of the things that I talk about a lot, and we've lost sight of this. So you asked, where did that shift really happen? Well, I think it happened with these, right? I think this is
good point.
One of the reasons, where, perception is reality, and our messaging as a society is success, and you can have it all, and so we're sending out the message. And we just started this conversation with, you can do anything, right?
Yeah.
So we're sending the messaging that you can have it all, you can be successful, you can be anything you want to be, but we're not sending the messaging of the work that you're talking about. We are moving away from teaching the natural process of things. I every week get the opportunity to train my team, and I a couple of weeks ago was just talking about, you can't rush a natural process. And the natural process is what I call the law of the farm, right? The law of the farm says you reap what you sow. Right? You reap what you sow, but you never reap in the same season that you sow. That's a natural process, right?
Yes.
P90X or 75 hard, like we were talking about. Like, you don't see, you have to work your ass off physically for 60 days before you ever see any real change, like before and after change, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 90-day process for that. I talk about it on the Man Up Already podcast. There's a law there. It's the law nobody wants to talk about. You never reap in the same season that you sow, but you reap in multitudes of what you sowed when you did, so we just don't want to hear that messaging anymore. Everything is this. Get it now. I mean, look at what's happening in the media industry, right? With all the streaming sites. I want to watch an entire season now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I don't want commercials.
It's true.
Right? There's shows coming out that they're putting them out one a week, right? Even on streaming sites. And still you're like, what do you mean? You're not giving me all 10 episodes?
Isn't that wild? Yeah. And you'll see people who won't watch it for 10 weeks so they can watch them all at once.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where we're losing it, because dude, if you're going to go into business, if you're going to be successful in real estate, financial coaching, in anything, right? You've got to put in the time.
Yeah.
You just have to. You can't rush that process. And to think that we're going to is a recipe, in my opinion, for disaster.
Yes. There are no shortcuts.
Nope.
And, I think you do see lottery winners, right? You see people who get on Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, YouTube, and they're 8 years old and they're selling some product and boom, they blow up overnight. It happens, but it is so few and far between. But when you're on these sites and you're only exposed to so much, you're not seeing the millions and billions of people who are on there. You're seeing the top 100 and you're just seeing them over and over and over. So that becomes your reality. Right. And you just assume that should happen to you as well. And it's,
yeah. Can I share this story? Cause it's so right there. I didn't mean to cut you off. Did I cut you off?
Do it, man. Yeah.
So, and I just read this, and every time I read it, it blows me away because it's so right. It's been in front of our face for millennia. Okay. So, I think I hopefully used that word right, but there's a story in the Bible, right? I love the story of Israel in the Bible because I don't know where listeners.
I don't know the story of Israel at all.
Really?
No.
Okay. So Israel is like the chosen people. Okay. It's in the Old Testament. It's in the book of Exodus. Okay. It's a great story, but so they're slaves in Egypt. Okay. And Egypt tries to wipe them out and they get delivered. And God says to them, I'm going to take you to the promised land. This story is so real in everyday life. That's why I talk about it so much. I'm going to bring you into the promised land. From Slavery Joe to promised land is an 11-day journey. Okay, that's all it is. But they spend 40 years wandering around the desert because they mentally couldn't get their act together. And so what God said to them was, I'm not bringing you in there until you mentally can handle it. But one of the things he says to them is, there's people living in there already that I'm not going to wipe out all at once. We're going to do it piece by piece, because if I give you everything all at once, it's too much for you to handle.
Yep.
Okay. So why do I share that story? We're trying to rush a process why do lottery winners lose most of that money when they win it? Right? Why do people who are given massive success on the front end squander it on the back end? Because they never went through the maturation mental process to handle what's actually earned along the way.
Yeah.
And that's what we're losing.
Yeah, I read somewhere, I'm making this up now, but it was 90-something% of lottery winners lose all that money within 5 years. And when you look at, it's the same thing with the NBA, with the NFL. It's not, and you'll get people who want to talk about, hey, let's just make a socialist community. And, you could give all of the money. I know this isn't the idea behind socialism, but you could give all of the money, divvy it up even, and give everybody their, whatever it is, their big sum of money. And in 5-10 years with the market, the free market, it's going to be right back in the hands of the people it's in right now. And it has this much to do with where the money starts, and this much to do. I don't know. I always say, like, I don't want to pick Donald Trump because I don't want to make it sound like I'm but I'll say Trump. If you take Trump's name away from him, Gary Vaynerchuk, if you take Gary Vaynerchuk's name away from him, if you take both of their fame away from them, if you take away all their money, everything except their brain, they will come back and be multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire, successful people within a few years. And they'll do it every single time because they just know how to do it. They have the habits in place and they know how to do it.
Yep. I was talking to one of our teammates yesterday, and, she said, we were talking about just success and getting to the next level, right? Like, how do you go from, a realtor to a broker of brokers, and right? And one of the things we were talking about, I said, the difference, why can some person who's dealing with the same adversity be successful when another person can't? And I said, it's how they perceive what's going on around them. That's the difference. The difference is, how do we process the information that we're seeing, right? You'll put you'll put a Trump into a situation and somebody else and put them in the exact same situation.
Yep.
But how they perceive what's happening and then what they do next, has everything to do with what you're talking about.
And I'll bring that down to the granular level is with a realtor. I always say successful realtors versus average or non-successful realtors. And this is true everywhere. I'm just picking on realtors right now. You're going to have the same circumstances. You're dealing with the same buyers, the same sellers. It's the same process, the same paperwork. But when stress comes, because it's going to come in every single deal you have, there's going to be a hurdle. It's how you deal with it. And the professional, the stud, the guy who gets it done every single time, it doesn't impact him at all. It literally pops in. It's a thing in my head. And it's not stress out. It's not worry. It's not freak out. Am I going to lose that commission? Are they going to be upset? It's what's the best plan moving forward? Let's do it. And you instantly do it. You don't spend 23 minutes wasted thinking about it. You just attack it with your best shot. And it's maybe not even that your best shot is any better than the average guy's shot. It's that you implemented it 23 minutes beforehand.
Right.
And then you got 23 more minutes of work done while that guy was still bitching and moaning. And man, those 23 minutes really add up when it's multiple times a day, every single day for years,
Yeah, it's really great. An analogy that a guy in our business, he's a multi-million-dollar earner and a good friend and coach. And he said to me, the first thing he said to me was, it's so small. What you're dealing with is so small. It's scary. He goes, your massive problem is so small. It's disturbing. Right. So for me, it was massive.
Yeah.
For him, it was like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Right? And that's where I learned what you're talking about. And then the other one is you'll hear, like you're doing a deal or you're dealing with life. I see this all the time in our business is you'll hear somebody say, I got a lot on my plate. Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I got a lot on my plate.
Yeah.
Well, your plate, right. Your massive, got a lot on your plate is the size of a saucer.
Yes.
Right. Where somebody else is holding a banquet platter.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Every time I hear that, I think, dude, come with me for one day.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Man. It really is. The only work, the number one work you got to do is on your head. And I talk about that in the book. I give some exercises in there, to get, a lot of people have said to me about the book, Joe, man, you could have gone deeper. And that wasn't the book I wanted to write. I wanted to get people thinking because us thinking about what we're actually thinking about is where the real work gets done, right? It's not, I don't want to tell, I love, Tony Robbins had that movie, I'm Not Your Guru. I don't want to be your guru. I want to just, I want to wake you up, right? What you're doing, you're waking people up. It's so funny too, because I could have the sound off on my phone, and yet I'll see your face and I know what you're saying. Like you're doing that, hey, wake up, whatever. Right. And so you're grabbing that attention. You're getting people to think because that's where the real work's done.
Yes. Yeah. I say this all the time. Every day after I work out, man, that's when I'm the most fired up. So I'll make a lot of my motivational posts on Instagram right after I work out. And I say all the time, nothing I say when it comes to motivation, improving yourself, goal setting, time blocking, any of that stuff is really earth shattering. I mean, you can watch a million podcasts. You're going to hear somebody else say it. I heard it from somewhere and I'm just regurgitating it. That's not the trick. That's not the secret. You got to just quit saying, yeah, Joe, great idea, and actually write it down and implement it. That's the trick. That's what nobody does. Right. They all get it. They all agree with it. It makes sense to all of them. You and I are not rocket scientists. It's that they don't put in the effort to implement it. And I get so flippin' frustrated. So I was in the Army for 10 years and I had my top 10% soldiers who I could have told them anything. It didn't matter. They were going to crush it no matter what. And then I had my bottom 10% that didn't give a damn what I said. They were absolutely going to be horrendous soldiers. But it's at 80%, like that top 10 and bottom 10, they're going to do what they're going to do no matter what. I didn't matter, right? But that middle 80 was where you had the influence. And it frustrated me so much when I knew these people could be so successful. And all they had to do was little things, simple things, but they just had to do it consistently. They had to drop a plan or something, and just, it was so simple, but they don't do it. And I always wonder, I don't know, man, because I get pretty deep with it. I will actually take these guys aside and be like, listen, I'm going to help you build the plan. Let's build the plan. It doesn't matter. I can goal set. I can write it down. I can be their accountability buddy. I can do all of it. And unless I'm literally holding their hand the second I back off, it's done.
Right.
And it's such an interesting, it still does frustrate me, but now, because I'm not in the Army and I don't have people under me. I mean, now if I have people under me, it's because I chose for them to be under me. And if they're not doing it, you're done. I want warriors with me, man. I'm here to crush it. So if you're not of the same mindset I'm of, you're done, son. Like, we're just not made for each other. But you can't do that in the Army. You know, it's a different gig.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just stuck. I'm stuck with those guys, which there's good and bad to it. It forces you to be, I mean, when you're an employer, I don't know if that's the best leadership training for you as an employer, you know, because you can fire everybody. But when you're forced to maintain those employees, you have to keep them, but you also have to execute. Man, that's an interesting dynamic right there.
It is. And I see it in my business all the time. My business is built on volunteer people. Nobody has to be here, you know, so you got to really tap into the heart of things.
What do you mean your business is on volunteer people?
Well, so our model is, it's only until you become a regional vice president that you actually sign a contract with our company. So, if I'm, you know, recruiting somebody onto our team, there's no quotas, there's nothing. They get to come and go as they want. You know, we have a system that allows people to come into business, into the financial world at no risk. I mean, we pretty much pay for all licensing and do all these things. So you've got to have people showing up and actually active, you know, that what you just talked about, really the 90-10, right? 10% are, no matter what you do, doesn't matter. They're going to go freaking crush it. 80% are wandering in the wilderness, and 10 are just going to stay in Egypt and be slaves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, that 80%, I think you go from 80% to 10% because if you do it all, because something emotional happens that forces you to or moves you to. I've seen people, Joe, where their finances are a mess. They've got no money, and you think that that's the thing that's going to move them to take care of their family and get going. And they're just not a 10%er. They're just not, right? So no matter what job they jump through or jump to, no matter what they're going, right? They're going to stay in. And we're trying to say that, because you said it earlier, and I don't want to get into a political conversation, but you can't take the reason why most of the money is with the select few is because it's the 10%. They're the ones that it applies everywhere. So this idea that we'll spread it out doesn't matter. They're still not going to do anything with it.
Yeah.
So, and if that pisses anybody off, right, then go do something about it, right? Like,
exactly.
Go do something. If you don't like that concept, you're either one who's doing something, or you're sitting around making excuses, right? Because you're not doing something. So in our business, it is. So if I bring somebody into my business, I've got to pour into them and find out what their core desire is, because that's the thing I got to tap into, because that's what's going to move them.
Yeah.
You
know, it's interesting too, to tie back to a couple things we've already talked about with real estate agents. If you ask 100 realtors to tell you why they got into real estate, almost all of them will reply with the same one-word answer: freedom.
Yep.
And I think their perception of freedom is, I get to go to little Johnny's baseball game, and I get to go to little Susie's ballet rehearsal, and I can wake up when I want, go to bed when I want. All of that's true short term. But after a couple months, when you're not bringing in any checks because you're not putting in the work, you're not making the calls, you're not knocking on the doors, what happens is you lose all that freedom.
Yeah, you bet.
Because now you're out of shape. you don't have a good relationship with your wife or your family, you don't have any business going on. And in real estate, it's a cycle, man. It's 60, 90 days to get something going. So you can work your ass off all week. You're not getting fed for another 2-3 months. And so you actually lose all of that freedom that you thought you were going to have. And which leads me into another thing, which is, we all tell ourselves a story of who we are and why things are happening. And some of us make excuses and like to justify why these horrible, negative things, unsuccessful things in our lives are happening. And it's an outside thing, right? It's not me. It's my boss. It's the economy. It's my health. It's whatever. And it's not to say that those things aren't occurring and they're not hindrances, but dude, the top 10% are going to make it happen no matter what. And if they can do it, you can do it. But when you tell yourself that story, and that can go both ways. The story I've told myself is I'm the hardest working dude on the Treasure Coast. Now, whether that's true or not, I wake up every single day believing that. Like, I talk about that it's on my voicemail, man. And because of that, when a hurdle gets in my way and I can either bitch for 23 minutes and chill out, or I can be like, dude, I'm going to work through this right now. I always choose work because that's the story I've told myself. So if I don't follow through with the action that meets with the story I'm selling myself on, I don't feel like the definition that I've created for myself. Now, for me, for that one thing, because I also have negative definitions of myself where I've allowed myself to make up excuses like we all do. But which I guess is my other point. You can make up stories that allow you excuses for everything. I don't have any money because I don't have a college degree. I don't have a great relationship because I married the wrong girl. I don't, whatever it is. And you allow some outside thing, stimulus, person to be the excuse instead of taking the reins yourself. What do you think about that? The telling yourself of a story and just buying into it as the definition of you.
I love it. There's two things. Number one is, I think the greatest thing that you could do to have the right thoughts is to, you got to personally develop like crazy. And we were talking about that. It comes from reading. Yeah. And there's no excuse today anymore between podcasts, between Audible. There's so much content out there that excuses don't. If you're blaming somebody else, you're not taking ownership. And there's a book I read last year called Extreme Ownership. It's written by a couple of SEALs.
Jocko Willink, baby.
Yeah, got it. Great freaking book. Yeah. But that I got to tell you something. That concept saved the life that I have right now. Last year, just taking extreme ownership. I was in a situation personally that thank God that we applied that. So. You got to take extreme ownership, and that concept is it's nobody else's fault. It's my fault. Period.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, it's my fault. So I had a potential client that I was dealing with, and I brought my value, brought my best, and it didn't happen. And I could bitch and moan and complain, or I can look at it and go, all right, what do I own from this scenario? And once I pinpointed what that was, and here's the thing, I now have the power again, right? I'm not I can't figure out, think of the word, but I now am filled back up with my own personal power that, I take ownership of that thing.
Yep.
That's the thing I can apply so that when I'm moving forward powerfully, that one thing can literally change the rest of my life, my business.
Yes.
Right. So that's the power of extreme ownership. It's just having that ability, and then the other, it's that skill, I guess, taking that responsibility. But the other thing is, I heard this a long time ago, and I teach this a lot. I think it's actually in the book. I can't take credit for it, but it really is true. In the absence of goals, the brain focuses on survival. right? So
Interesting.
if we're not chasing big goals that
Yeah.
are here, they have to
Yeah.
be emotional, then we just focus on survival. And a good friend of mine, Ian Pruckner, wrote a book called Byproduct. And what he talks about is your thoughts equal your beliefs equal your actions, which produces your results. Your results
Yeah.
are a byproduct of your thoughts, beliefs, and then your actions, which is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So if I take extreme ownership, right, because I've got these emotional goals that have to happen, and I tell myself that story of I'm the hardest working person, money is easy and everywhere. I'm the greatest I possibly could be in what I do at all times. Whatever your thoughts are, they create your beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a great husband. I'm a great father. I'm a great, like if you just keep pounding those emotional thoughts, they breed these beliefs. And circling back to what we were talking about. Why does a Trump or why do these people, Gary V, no matter you take everything away, why will they rise back up? Because their beliefs are that they're just being who they are, right?
Yeah.
But it started with thoughts. And they
Yes.
take those actions that create the results that everybody stands back and goes, how do you do that? And the answer is if you thought like they did, you'd believe what they believe and you do the same thing.
Yes.
So we're always trying to, I never thought about it this way, but we're always trying to hack somebody else's life.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of just working on ours.
Yeah. Which is way easier.
Right.
You fully control.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's the one thing I never. I remember I would say this to people like, what the greatest thing, like our business, what the greatest thing about your business, Joe, or the greatest thing about my business is it's your fault.
Yeah.
And because it's your fault, because it's my fault, man, we could fix that. I remember working for the school district. I couldn't fix anything. If they cut the program, I couldn't do anything. I had to go home to my wife and say, hey, we can't do this anymore. And I have no control. The beauty of entrepreneurship and business is you're in control.
Yes. That was one of the biggest reasons. I mean, there were a lot of reasons that I got out of the Army. Is there's always someone higher ranking than you, and some of them are amazing. Some of the most amazing people I ever know in my life I met in the military, but also some of the laziest people I ever met just stayed there long enough. And the way that rank works is in the Army, it's time and how good are you. So if the how good are you isn't there, eventually the time works out for you and you get the rank. And it was frustrating. I don't mind working my ass off at all. If I don't mind showing up early, I don't mind, leaving late. I don't mind any of that if it's for a great purpose. But sometimes you had people over you, and this isn't an Army thing, man. This is a life thing.
Corporation thing.
Yeah. Where people they were passing the buck. They didn't have a great mission. They were trying to get out of as much as they could instead of trying to get into as much as they could. And nobody wants to work for that person, So I remember when I got into business, that still is a big thing in my mind. I talk with my wife works with me, and anytime she's bitching about something, I'm like, honey, it's your business, man. Guess who can fix this? You and me, baby. Let's do it.
Right.
And I just get excited because that is business. Business is one big hurdle after another. And the guy who gets through them quickest with the least amount of emotion and the most amount of logic wins over the long period every single time. And it's fun, man. It's a fun game.
And here's you're so dead on, right? And we say around here, right, that the road to success, leads through the city dump, right? It just does. Some people decide to put a house there and get used to the smell.
Yes.
But the bigger the crap sandwich, the bigger the income, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So you get paid big money to deal with big problems. Period.
Yes.
And if we're, here's it took me so long to get out of that. I'm a big fan of the cash flow quadrant, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yes.
You're going to go from the employee quadrant to the business owner quadrant. And it took me so long to get out of the employee quadrant mentally into the business owner quadrant mentally. And sometimes I think I struggle there. Sometimes I still think like a self-employed person, which is kind of scary. So it's all a process, but
you're aware.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
And I'm working on it. But when I became aware that, yeah, I was a high school band director and I was running a whole music program, but I they were sending me the students,
Yeah.
right? They were buying the music equipment, not me.
Yep.
They were picking out my budget. Now I had a show, I put in the hours. So I thought hard work was the time I was exchanging, but that's being an employee. You exchange
Yep.
time for income. But I
Yep.
wasn't solving big problems, Joe. I could think all that I wanted. I'm changing the world one student at a time. I'm teaching high school music.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm impacting lives, but I'm not solving big problems to earn big income.
Yeah.
And I think you got to get out of the employee-employer relationship. I think when you get out of that, you're free to solve the kind of problems that you want to solve.
Yep.
And you get paid accordingly.
Yeah. I've told this story a million times, but I think it's so cool. I have a phenomenal client who's done a couple deals with me lately. And the other day we had her house listed. So, and she's thinking Joe, the salesman, is losing out here, right? That's where she ends up here. She's got her house listed, but then we had an issue where her son and his wife needed to move down immediately from New York. So she's like, listen, I can't, like, the whole reason I was selling is so I could buy this bigger house, but I'm paying cash and I can't do that and help my kids. And I got to help my kids. So we got to take my house off the market, which means you also lost the buy sign on this other deal. So I really lost 2 deals, but you'll get this one. And then later when I get enough cash, I'll get another. So this whole thing goes down. And I remember her saying, Joe, I'm so sorry for all the chaos. I really appreciate what you're doing, but I'm so sorry. And I said, listen, the more chaotic you make this and the tougher hurdles you put in front of me, the more value I'm delivering to you. I said, bring it on, baby. Give me more. And she just kind of chuckled and it calmed her. She instantly thought, I don't know. I'm guessing she instantly thought, Joe's got this. Like, it doesn't matter what I put in front of him. He's just going to make it happen. And once you get your clients to see that you think that way and you're not freaking out, and I wasn't faking it. I genuinely don't give a damn if I get 5 transactions out of that client, if I get 1, if I get 0, how can I help you? And just, if that's your intent, money follows and it's easy.
There you go. Right. And it's a good reminder for me. And here's the power of a mastermind, and here's the power of relationships. We need to be reminded of these things because it's so easy to forget and get lost in the weeds. Right. But whether you close that deal with this woman or not, the effort, the universe rewards that effort, right?
Yes.
Come back. It's coming from somewhere.
Yep.
A good friend of mine said to me last week, every challenge is more opportunity, right? And in every challenge that we face, there's more opportunity there.
Yes.
That's what the resistance is, right?
Yep.
The more resistance, the more opportunity. Grant Cardone talks about that a lot. So
yes.
It's it's learning to live with that. And if life is easy and we're able to coast and we're chilling out, watching Netflix and doing all that shit and on social media, get used to your income because that's where it's staying. And, people say, well, money isn't everything. No, but it's kind of like oxygen. You really do need it. Right? Yeah. You really do need it. And in today's economy, because I'm seeing it on the front lines, I'm seeing what's happening to people because I'm sitting there looking at their financial life. You got to make 6 figures today to just get by.
Yeah.
You really do. Without, there's no way around it. And it's getting worse every year. So if we don't change, then the middle class squeeze is going to continue to happen.
Yeah. When I initially heard you say you got to make 6 figures to get by, I thought, well, I don't know if you got to make 6 figures, but honestly, I really do think you're right because, even if you're like, hey, I only need to make 50, 60 grand. Okay, cool. But are you saving for your retirement? Because if you're not, now you're going to turn 60, 70 years old. You've got nothing. So you didn't really fund your future and you're not feeling that pain yet. So you don't get it. Are you paying for health insurance? Because if you're not and something catastrophic happens, dude, you're done. That's the end of your life. And maybe the end of your life is going to last a year. That's going to be the worst. Like, you're not just going to necessarily die. You might have a year of the worst pain of your life because you didn't go buy health insurance. And so I mean, I'm really making this an intense thing. I don't know why I'm making this so intense, but honestly, to your point, I think if the response, which is kind of what my initial one was we don't need quite that much. I would argue you do. I think you made a great point there.
Well, let me give you some numbers, and I'll gratuitously, if that's the word, plug that I'm on a mission right now. Okay. I really do I want to recruit, train, and develop people because I want to help people make an extra $500 to $1,000 a month, working one night a week, doing what it is that we do. Because here are the numbers, Joe, and this is how I know that the six figures, you got to be making 80 to 100 grand in our country today to just get by. And why I say that is, if you are 30 years old and you want to retire at 65 because of inflation, at 65 years old, you're going to need $1.5 million accumulate. That is a real number. I've run that number all the time, which basically means you need to fully fund a Roth IRA at 30 years old, right? All the way to 65 years old.
Yeah. Okay?
Well, that's $500. So your average family,
a month,
if you want to retire, two people want to retire on 60 grand a year, which is 5,000 a month, and account for inflation, starting at 30, you need to put away $1,000 per couple.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 12 grand right off the top for retirement.
Can I ask you, are you figuring the 4% rule, or what are you figuring on?
I'm using 3% inflation.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I'm only, we're just compounding the money out, at a 8% rate of return.
Yeah.
Long term, right? So, if that's the number, if you got to put away 12 grand just to accumulate from 30.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, groceries in my house for 4 people, groceries are $1,000 a month, right? Easy, right? Yep. That's $250 a week, 4 people. That's another 12 grand. So we've got $24,000 of retirement and food.
Yeah.
Then throw on gas, throw on having a house, throw on either one person's going to make that income or 2 people are going to work. But if 2 people are working, now you got daycare.
Yep.
Right? So you've got all these things, 2 cars, right? Are you going to be able to not accumulate debt, right? And be responsible? Well, it's kind of hard to be responsible when you don't make enough money.
Yes.
And we have this message that no, you're squandering your money. You can do it on 40,000. Bullshit. You cannot. You cannot do it. You're going to send another person to work. So now combined, you got 80,000 coming in, but then now you got to take off retirement. You got to take off food. You got to take off everything. You got to take off daycare. You got to, and then your marriage is falling apart. It just,
yes,
you got to make 6 figures to have a life. So let me say that you can survive. Remember what I said, right?
Yep.
You can survive.
Goals and survival.
Only think about, but if you're making 6 figures, now you can start focusing on goals.
Yeah.
And elevate yourself.
So I want to bring this in a different direction. I talk a lot about the difference between motivation and discipline. And it's funny you brought up Tony Robbins because he says it all the time. It drives him nuts when people say, you motivate me. And he's like, dude, I don't want to motivate you. I want you to become disciplined and do it every day, even when you're not motivated.
Yeah.
But I hear people say that to me because I got a lot of energy and I make these motivational videos in the mornings and people say you motivate me. And I think the same thing now because I'm in the same mindset. And I think, dude, you're not doing what you need to do consistently to be, maybe you're doing it on Monday and Tuesday and then you kind of putter off the rest of the week. And then you get all ramped back up because you had a nice little weekend. So you do it again on Monday and Tuesday. But I'd almost rather you do it at 80%, but every day. So if you're not feeling it, just do it anyway. But how do you, and this is where I'm asking you, what would you recommend in your experience to create that link, that bridge between the motivation that we all get when we listen to a YouTube video that fires us up, or we go to some big, Tony Robbins event? Where is that link, that bridge that connects that motivation that we get initially to the discipline you actually need to succeed every day when you don't necessarily have that motivation?
Yeah, it's great. So I think it's Atomic Habits that talks about your systems.
Yeah.
You default to your systems, right? Is that right? That's that book?
Yeah. I mean, I'm reading it right now. I'm probably 3/4 of the way through it. And it is such a, personally, I'm not a big mindset book. Like mindsets are great, but I want like, what is the actionable task I can write down and do? This book is an actionable task book. It's amazing. But yeah, I had to throw that out there because the book is rocking my world, man.
Yeah. I think, motivation only lasts so long, right?
Yep.
It's very short lived. But I think we default to our habits and our systems. And I'm a big systems guy. I always look for, and I just talked about it on my podcast yesterday, that it doesn't take a Herculean effort. It takes a daily effort.
Yes.
Right. And Darren Hardy has the book Compound Effect. And that's really what it is every single day. Gary Keller wrote, The One Thing, the guy who built Keller Williams.
Yes.
And in that book, he talks about, what's the one thing that if I do it makes everything else easy or unnecessary.
Yep.
Right. So in my business, and I'm sure it's very similar in yours.
Yeah.
My business, it comes down to setting appointments.
Yep.
Right. So I know that if every day I set 4 appointments, and I don't hit that mark every day, and some days I have a really bad day, but I know that if I set 4 appointments a day, everything else will work out. Right. So I don't have to worry about motivation is I'm inspired by my goals.
Yep.
My goals inspire me. That's why I say that your goals have to be emotional, but take the goal and you should be able to break that whole thing down to the one thing that makes everything else easy or unnecessary. And whatever that is, that's the thing you pound every single day.
So let me ask you this. With me, I've got a lot of guys who are asking me for coaching tips, right? And they always want to know, how many transactions am I going to do? How much money should I make? How many closings? And I say, those are fun things to make goals about. And you can make those goals. But honestly, I don't control if I'm going to make $100,000 this year or $1 million this year. I don't know if I'm going to close 20 houses or 100 houses, but I can 100% guarantee that I can make the amount of calls I want to make, because I make those. You cannot stop me. If I want to make X amount of calls in a day, I can absolutely find the time to make those calls. And day to day, I don't know what's going to come out of that funnel I'm filling, but over the span of a year, I know the success that you're going to get with X amount of calls. When you are taking these guys underneath you, are you doing goal setting with them?
I do with the right people.
The top 10, 20. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Got it.
And when you do that, I can see why you would. Are you focusing on the end income, or are you focusing on the 4 appointments, or both?
It's really the end result should be a byproduct.
Yes.
Of the things you do every single day.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, here, I'll just transition and then we probably got to wrap this up pretty soon.
Yeah.
But our son is 16 going on 17, and he's in his junior year. And we all know junior years, it's rough, right? Junior year is like, in high school, that's when the shit starts to get really real.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of all over the place. And I said, he's like, I can't keep track of everything. And I said, you need a planner. And he goes, what do you mean? I don't even, he just couldn't grasp that concept. And so I helped him. You got to be able to sit down and write out your goal. What are you accomplishing every day? Right. And you write down the night before, what's the day going to look like tomorrow? And then what do I need to do when I need to do it? And if you have those things mapped out, success is a byproduct.
Yep.
You don't, like you said, I don't know when, but I know for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I'm doing the reps.
Yeah. And you might get little dips that didn't quite match up, and you might get little explosions that you maybe didn't fully deserve. It'll happen, but long run, and the longer run we're talking about, the more it's true, your success is going to match what you put in day to day.
You bet. You bet.
It just is.
Well, I go back. I'll just finish this thought. Is I go batshit crazy if I don't have that funnel. right? Because I know what's going to happen. Like,
you can see it way ahead of time.
It's pretty simple. This, in your business, our business, it's not a magical thing. It's very predictable.
Yep.
Because you can break everything down to the first step, to the next step. And if you don't have the ability to run that process, you and I both know it's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, hey, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. If these guys want to reach out to you and ask you a few more questions, where can they find you?
You can find me. I'm on Instagram, J Puritz. So last name is Puritz, J Puritz. That's also my Twitter. LinkedIn, John C. Puritz. I'm just not on Facebook, but I'm on pretty much everything else. My email is johnpuritz@gmail. Right, it's really hard to remember.
Yeah,
but man, I appreciate. It's funny, right? It's an hour, and you and I are just getting ramped up, buddy. Like, I could go a whole other hour with you.
I said this before we got on. I said, I always prep. I've got notes sitting over here to ask about. I didn't even touch on. I probably have 15 things written down. I think I touched on one because while you were talking, it brought up something else. And I was like, oh man, I got to talk about this. So yeah, great discussion, my man. It's always fun talking with people with big, insightful minds. So I really appreciate it.
Well, we'll reciprocate and get you on the Man Up Already podcast, and we'll continue the conversation. It'll be fun. I really would love to have you on there as a guest and dive into, your experience in the military and then how you're transferring it. Because you're transferring what you did here over into your business.
Oh, yes.
And this is what I mean by you can't hack somebody else's life. Like, I don't have that experience. I can't expect the results that you're getting. I didn't have the prep work that you did in the military that you can have now showing up in your business, right? You're just continuing that process. We all come from where we come from. It's all our story, right?
Yep.
We all have that unique one. So I'd love to have you as a guest as well. It'll be fun.
Anytime, my man. Just let me know. Absolutely.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Thanks, my man. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, buddy. You too. Thanks.
Adios.
Bye.